So guys, welcome back from the break. We're going to talk about, we're talking today about social rights and how Spain has been a pioneer or not on these fields. On the first half of the class, we talked about the past and Francoism and how changed and how in the 2000s there are certain areas where we were pioneers, particularly regarding same-sex marriage, where we talked a little bit about gender violence, we talked a little bit about equality, and last we talked about dependency. That dependency actually, if it was not because of the economic crisis, we could have talked about being pioneers, and actually, well, not being pioneers, but get at least matching the level of other welfare states in Europe. But because of this same reason, that why dependency law did not fully develop, that is the economic crisis, that's why 2010s, we can more or less talk about a lost decade, at least, in terms of real policy being passed and being implemented in Spain. However, I mean, despite not passing much legislation on these issues, we can say that, okay, in terms of the factual laws, we have not advanced, but then social movements did happen. And this is certain, I mean, by the end of the day, you know, the social change always comes from social movements, and by having an impact in the agenda is how you make change. So in terms of social movements, we've talked already in class about the main movement, and you should already be able to recognize that picture, and that was 2011, and here we're talking about 15M. And you know about 15M, this was this social movement that it was non-partisan against the political class, and obviously this included many issues in the agenda, from corruption of Partido Popular and Partido Socialista, to other aspects of to have a better quality of life. And here we're talking about evictions, that is also related to the economic crisis, because of the number of evictions growing with the economic crisis. This has, this movement got also involved on that issue. Actually, the legislation on that did not change much since, but yeah, you can see that actually how 15M had an impact on the social agenda in Spain, and how if they did not introduce specific issues in the agenda, at least they awaken consciousness. I mean, they raise awareness on certain issues, and that was an important fact for sure, as we know. And you know that we mentioned that Podemos is more or less a result of this movement. I mean, not everyone in the movement ended up in Podemos, but I mean, it was in a sense related. What else is important right now in Spain? I mean, actually, I don't know if you got experience here, but 8 de Marzo for the last 3 years has become an important day in our calendar, because by the end of the day, that's Women's Day, and that day mobilizations are taking place in Spain, asking for, on the one hand, more protection, and on the other hand, more equality. The two attempts in 2004 and 2007 with the gender violence and the gender equality law, you've seen that they fell short. I mean, at least it was a beginning. It changed and introduced the issue in the agenda, but it has not resulted. It has not had the impact we needed in our society. And obviously, this is an issue that is still very alive. And actually, I don't know if I mentioned this in class. This was triggered. I mean, the kind of gaining traction of the movement because of a case of La Manada. I don't know if we mentioned this in class or not. Maybe we did discuss it. It was a case where 4 men raped a woman, and it was pretty much about consent and what consent means in Spain nowadays. And actually, this piece of legislation, new piece of legislation on gender violence and gender equality, it's being right now drafted. I mean, by the end of the day, they're working before the whole crisis. I mean, it was being worked in by the government and also discussed in Parliament. So actually, we can expect short term more legislation, more reforms on these fields. And last but not least, the last social aspect that we can talk about nowadays in Spain that is being discussed in our society, and quite likely is going to be new legislation on this matter is going to is going to be passed during this term is euthanasia. And here we've had a few polemic cases that actually reintroduced this issue in the agenda. You can imagine what kind of cases. By the end of the day, marriages were uh, one of the spouses finishes the life of the other under their request because they could not support the pain anymore. So by the end of the day here, how the government is framing this issue right now is derecho a una muerte digna. Digna, I don't know the word for that, but by the end of the day, is a right to death. And this is a piece of legislation that we can expect short term in Spain. And this leads us to, and actually she said 2010 there, but it leads us to a question that I want to leave you with. And I've already told you, and this is something I mentioned before, that is how our welfare states, how the welfare state is transforming. How from the 80s we have a dynamic of retrenchment, how programs are less and less generous, also has to do with the demographic pressure of our society and how globalization is affecting our societies. We have to compete with other countries in this terms and these available resources for the state. And well, obviously, I mean, there's always that debate whether this is retrenchment or this is being efficient with our welfare state. But obviously, there's always more there. There's always something to do in our society. There are always social rights to be conquered. And I want to leave you with this question, and I want you to think, I mean, and reflect a little bit. I mean, I want you, this is more a wish rather than an assignment, but I would like you to reflect on these. What are areas can we still improve in? Where are the deficits of our welfare states, and how we can make our society a fair society by the end of the day. So guys, I hope you enjoyed the class today. I'll see you again on Wednesday, and we're going to start talking about the economy. Bye.